Hello and welcome to It's Never Too Late, the podcast where we explore the inspiring journeys of women who have embraced change, achieved remarkable things, and followed their dreams in midlife and beyond. I'm Clare Roberts-Molloy, midlife mindset coach, and in each episode, I'll be speaking with women who prove that age is just a number and it's never too late to chase your dreams and achieve your goals. So today I am joined by the very lovely future-focused business mentor, coach and consultant Clare Norton, who is dedicated to helping startups and founders implement effective strategies, streamlined operations and enhance profitability. She has a rich background in business ownership, leadership and exit strategies, and she brings real-world experience to support entrepreneurs in building sustainable, profitable businesses. But her journey didn't follow a straight path. Far from it. So from stepping into the unknown with a tech company on the brink of collapse to executing multi-million-pound exit strategies to pivoting into education, governance and consulting, she has consistently embraced challenge, change and reinvention. And she's proof that stepping outside your comfort zone can lead to unexpected and fulfilling opportunities. So, Clare, that's a little bit about you. I appreciate putting all the word strategy into your bio. So, the word that I always struggle to say rather repeatedly. So, but welcome, Clare. It's so lovely to have you on the podcast today. So, I've given us very brief synopsis of your career, and I know it's been really varied. So, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and let us know what you've been up to, particularly since turning 40.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm super inspired by all that you do. So I'm delighted to be on board and part of your podcast and looking forward to all the things that we've got coming up together. So I guess 40 for me was a bit of a watershed moment. Started out in business and I'm kind of self-taught. I've worked in a lot of different areas before then went into my husband at the time's business and his business partner. And we, I guess, kind of just did life. And then you get to 40 and my marriage ended quite publicly. And I guess it was a real moment where you have to get your Bridget Jones pants on, pull yourself back up and work out how you're going to do this. I'm really, really lucky that I've had lots of opportunities come my way that I haven't been to look for. So, you know, one of my huge beliefs is really that you should always try and say yes or never say no is kind of how I phrase it, I think. And, you know, obviously it needs to be a measured decision, but largely speaking, you know, if somebody's approaching you, it could be a really good opportunity. So for me, I got to 40, didn't expect where I wanted to be. I was volunteering at the time as a school governor. I ended up stepping into a bursar role. As a registered charity for a school, needed a huge amount of input from a business strategy perspective. And from there, then I had a call to say, are you free? I've got a business from my next employer, if you like. We've grown really quickly and now we're plateauing a bit. We just need somebody to come in. And I spent 2 years there. I doubled the turnover and doubled it again and had a fantastic time. And then I got to last year. So I'm 48 now. So I've just gone 47, I think, at the time. And I just thought I have to make a change now. My friends actually were saying to me, make a change, go on your own, you can do it. But, you know, there's always that level of imposter syndrome, which everybody knows, you know, but also that, can I do it? You know, I'm a mum to a 16-year-old. There's only my income. You know, I'm a single mum in terms of I have him all the time. And to me, to make that jump, if you like, from a regular salary to going self-employed, even though I've run businesses before, this isn't a business, this is me, you know, and I think I was comfortable, if you like, in my mid-40s where I'd got that salary coming in. I'd navigated the divorce and I just got to the point where I've got to change it up again. So I did take the leap. I handed my notice in and I retrained as a divorce coach alongside, which I just found incredible. And it's something I really, really believe in. And Sarah, who is the divorce coach guru in the UK and globally, she's now one of my clients, which is fantastic. So I'm helping her with growth and ops strategy. So that's amazing. And then, from, I guess, the start of 2024, I just picked up clients. I still don't have a website, which is dreadful, but I've just never seemed to get the time. But, I think people just find you, or you find who you work well with. And that's really the best type of business, finding those synergies. And somebody hears about what you do, or hears you speaking somewhere, or sees your LinkedIn and likes, I guess, the way that you're kind of pitching it. And then I think it's just about having that initial chemistry call and working out from there. So, I didn't choose my life change after 40, but actually I'm more comfortable and I think happier than I've ever been. The responsibility, I guess, of your finances on your own and single parenting is, it's a lot, but I love what I do now. The girls were right. Listen to your tribe, and it was one of the best things that I've ever done. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So much to unpack there. I mean, I do want to circle back before we, during this episode about the divorce coach thing, because I think that's a fascinating group. But just a couple of other things. First of all, you mentioned not having a website. And I think you don't always need one, do you?
Yeah, I think
and I think quite often we tie ourselves up in knots thinking we're not ready to take that big step because we haven't got all those ducks in a row. And we convince ourselves that we need all of the things before we can step up and step out. But you're the living embodiment to show that isn't actually necessary. And that's not just for your own business, but you're also then coaching other businesses. So you're also, the sort of proof is in the pudding, and that's what you're doing. But I'm interested, why did the girls in your tribe think you needed a change? What was happening that they went, you need to go out by yourself?
I think when you've run your own business, and I am confident in what I do, confident, not arrogant, is really important. And I have a track record where I've turned businesses around. And, I think when you've doubled somebody's turnover and you've doubled it again, you're at the point where you want the next step and the next tie-in with that company, or you need to make the move. And that's really where I think I got to. But I was hanging on a little bit, from I'm mid-40s. I am, back to the personal situation, I guess. And, I wasn't going to take that jump lightly. I try and give a good life, to Finn, and I love doing things and making memories with him. So to take that, I guess it's a confidence thing. You get to mid-40s, and I'd found the first lockdown really, really difficult. I worked through both. But the second one, when we went into it again, I thought, right, I'm coming out of this like a phoenix out of the flames.
Love that.
And I think you had to just dig deep, and then they were absolutely right. I loved what I had done, but the reality was I'd taken his business as far as I could. And it was self-limiting beliefs that was holding me back. And once I'd handed the notice in and gone for it, I didn't look back, to be honest. I set myself a little target, which I would really, really advocate in terms of changing careers. I decided that if I hadn't got the same level of earning or more within 3 months, that I would reconsider and look for another job. So I kind of thought, okay, I can give myself that amount of time. It's a good amount of time to see what happens, to give it a try, to sit. Because you have to sit comfortably with your decision and just breathe, you know. So it's a big change when you move, I think, or when you pivot to something new. And just having that breather of 3 months, knowing that I was financially okay for 3 months. But also it gave me a big sanity check where at the end of those, if you're not, or you can see that you're coming to the end of that 3rd month and you're not where you want to be, you know, you have to think again. It's time to think, okay, where do I go from here? I'm not going to keep plugging it if it's not working. I just need to be super practical about it. So
yeah, and I think that's really practical advice. And I know we've spoken before, haven't we, Claire, about because I also took that decision last year to go out by myself, and you know, we've spoken about taking that step, and you know, I've got a partner, you know, I've got a wife, so there is another income, but still, it's, you know, you still feel, well, gosh, what if it doesn't work? And for me, I wanted to, in a similar time frame, really, earn what I had been earning in the day job.
Yeah.
And again, it's very, very similar. I know we've spoken before about how can you make that transition from a day job into self-employment. And I think, you know, listeners, there might be something on the horizon about that. So who knows? Let's stick a pin in that for the minute.
Yeah.
But what our listeners won't know, Claire, is that we actually went to school together.
We did. How very exciting. And we reconnected at a brilliant women's event, didn't we? Which was fantastic.
We did,
so
yeah. So
I saw you across the room. My eyes aren't that brilliant now. I thought, I know that girl. She looks fabulous. And there you were.
There I was. Yeah. So it is funny how, you know, you can spend time with school with people, and then go your separate ways, and then, you know, life brings you back together again. And I know we've got lots of things planned together, which is fantastic. But when you were at school, when 15, 16-year-old Claire was at school, what was the plan? What did you think you were going to end up doing? And how was
it all planned out? I was going to be a dancer for the rest of my life. I'd already qualified as a dance teacher. I was already sort of starting to pick up jobs with the dance troupe I was in at the time. So, yeah, I was going to go off and travel the world and turn down a cruise ship, actually, at 18 for a boy. Oh, it was stupid, wasn't it? But, but actually, you know, I think at that point then I did sort of a few years of that, and I had a fantastic time, brilliant group of girls and guys, actually. And then I got to sort of 21, 22. I thought, okay, I've really got to get a proper job here. I didn't stay on for A-levels, don't know whether you remember, and I didn't go to uni either. So I think for me to come back into business, I started at college in computer programming. I mean, C++ at the time. And I just learned that whichever side of the brain it is that you need, I hadn't got it. So I took myself, I went and found a day job as well, and I was dancing as well in the evening at the same time. And then that kind of transitioned. I worked then for a legal firm, and I put myself through a legal executive qualification at night school at college. And then I went from there to Express and Star. Again, they're not planned moves for me. I'd love to say I have a grand plan. Actually, I think I don't even have a plan for tomorrow. So apart from being a Virgo and I quite like things in the diary, I think I'm also quite open nowadays, and I wasn't before. I think I've learned to just sit comfortably and take those opportunities, I guess. And that's taken years to grow into, you know, particularly going through perimenopause and all of that. But I think if you believe in what you do and you enjoy what you do, then that's a huge, huge plus, really. So
I love that journey. And I do remember you being really, really into dance.
Yeah.
school. And as you were speaking, I was like, oh, she's gone from the ballroom to the boardroom.
I love that.
Which maybe should be the name of your memoir. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm writing that down because I have no memory.
You can that one later. Yeah. But I think what's really evident is that despite that, what I love to call a squiggly career, you've been moving through, you've been saying yes to all the opportunities, which quite often people are really scared of. They let them go by, but you've embraced them. And even taking that first step into, going solo is how much happier you said you are now.
Yeah, way happier. I think, I understand now when it's not a good fit, and I'm not afraid to say, maybe I'm not the best fit for you. I like chemistry calls with clients. So I do some mentoring. I actually mentor retrospectively, I went back to Aston Uni, which was a fantastic experience, particularly as an adult. I do feel like I missed out clearly on some of it, but, definitely going back into a uni environment that I hadn't experienced before was a really, really great thing to do in 2023 for me. And I came out of that, I think, with an understanding of my skill set a bit better. I was sitting in the seminars thinking, well, I can do that, or, and I love the theory of everything that was in the course, but sometimes the practice was missing, so the real world experience. And I think I'd underestimated for a long time how many diverse, businesses I've worked in, because largely speaking, it doesn't matter what channel you're in, business principles are the same. Everybody's in it to make money. Everybody needs their profitability to be the right. You want a good life, regardless whether it's a lifestyle business or a business that's out there, to keep making money. Everybody wants to enjoy what they do. So I think sitting there at Aston was fantastic for me, because I kind of looked around the room and I thought, I've actually got something to give here. And that helps from a confidence perspective, I think. You forget, as you say, with your squiggly career, exactly what scenarios you've encountered, so.
Well, I think that's a really important point. But just on a sideline, I went to Aston University twice. That's something else where our journey.
Did you?
I did my undergrad there and MBA, so that's something else our journeys have crossed. It was a really good point you make, because I speak to a lot of women who perhaps have found themselves back in the labour market, often due to redundancy, for example.
Okay.
At this point in their life, and they feel that they don't have anything to offer, or they feel that they can't go for an opportunity.
Okay.
Different to what they've done before.
Yeah.
Because they don't recognise what value they can add and what diverse skill set that they've developed and obtained throughout their career. So that's really key, isn't it? Is to understand. It, we look at things and we go, well, I can't do that. But actually, you probably can. You just need to think a little bit differently of how your skills and how your experience applies to that. So that's really, really important. And why do you think, because you've mentioned it a few times, and it's something I've experienced with a lot of the clients I work with, that there is, and I don't know whether it's all the way through our careers or whether there is a turning point when we hit 40 because of all the connotations around being 40 and all those sort of societal expectations around midlife. But why do you feel a lot of women have that wobble of confidence around that time?
I think certainly for me, we'd run a brilliant business. We've got a great life. You get absorbed in family life, children. Your world, apart from traveling, obviously, your world shrinks a little bit, I think. And I think when you are independent and regardless of, when you're with somebody or you weren't with somebody, I think when you're younger and you're in your teens and your 20s, I look at Finn on the ski slope and he hurtles down with no fear at all, whereas I'm completely the opposite. And I think when you start out, the stakes are less. You know, there isn't a mortgage to pay, or there isn't a lifestyle that you want. And I think our world changes a little bit. I think we become maybe a bit more comfortable with where we're at. We kind of feel like we get to a point, certainly late 20s, early 30s, where life's good or settled, or you're still out there and you're sort of enjoying your life as it is. But I do think it shakes down, you know, in terms of where your priorities are. And then certainly for me, life wasn't perfect. It's just one of those things. You know, I didn't expect not to be married. In retrospect, that said, apart from the family element of it, you know, breaking up a family, I'm in infinitely better place in terms of personally, and I have a great life, and I'm really lucky. Life's not perfect, but, you know, it's a good life. And I think when you are in a role, or when your world has shrunk a little bit, I think you forget that you have so much to offer, you know. And I was listening to one of your podcasts the other week, and it got Wendy Garcas on it, and wow, I mean, what a woman, you know. And my one friend who'd given me a really good talking to about self-employed, everything I gave her as well, what about this? Well, what about that? What about the other? She wasn't playing devil's advocate. She was literally shooting me down in flames, you know. And sometimes you kind of think, do you know what? Yeah. So often I think when you were younger, I'm not so sure whether women championed women as much. And I think now we're so aware of the mental health side of things and the supporting each other. And I want that for men as well. You know, I think we should all feel it. I don't really think we should have any differential, if I'm honest. Everybody needs the support, and their crew. And I think you just get to the point where your world's a little bit smaller, you're a little bit more comfortable, and you perhaps forgot about the aspirations, maybe raising the kids and one thing and another. And then when you have to sit up and take notice, it's time to take stock, isn't it? So,
absolutely. So on that note, because you've just mentioned sort of the ending of your marriage and everything, talk to us about the decision to retrain as a divorce coach.
Oh, okay. So, do you know, it was really difficult, the end of my marriage, and it wasn't smooth. It was quite public. It was very hurtful, and it was really traumatic, is the reality of it. And I needed to be the anchor for Finn. So I had to be that stable parent, that anchor parent. And in that, I think you sacrifice some of yourself. You know, I just sold my soul to keep my marriage together fundamentally back in that day, at that time, at that moment in time, I probably did. But I think when you start sort of looking ahead, it's about, okay, what journey am I going to go on here? You know, you stop getting in the chaos of the having to drag yourself out of bed in the morning. And you're on a real journey at that point, a little bit like those lockdowns. Finn says it's the best time ever. For me, the first one was literally 2 months after, you know, my ex-husband, if you like, had left. I was on my own with Finn, and it was like, oh my God, this is life. And now we're in lockdown. And we live in a beautiful place. So I was very, very lucky to be here. But nevertheless, it's a heck of a shock. And I read some books at the time, huge fan of people like Rosie Green, who was a journalist, and she's now a bit more of a fashionista, etc. But she was really candid about her journey. She never sort of spoke ill of her ex. She was very factual about it, and I'm very much, you know, that way. It's important to me Finn has a relationship with his father. But I think I read a book by Sarah Davison, who is known as the divorce coach, and her her way of coming out of it made such sense to me. And she trains coaches. And I just wanted something good to come out of the worst thing, I guess, that had ever happened really in my life. I wanted other people to understand that it's not the end, actually. What you can come out of it with is something fantastic, and I've had an awesome few years since the divorce. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't turn the clocks back. I don't regret any of our life together. And I never wanted to come out of it bitter, ever. I just think it eats you up inside. And I just think the past is the past. You can't change it. You've got to look forward. And I just wanted to be able to give people the hope, I guess, and the side-by-side journey that it will be okay. It will look different, but it will be okay. You will get through it. And it will be positive. So I guess the short answer is to make something good come out of something that's really bad at the time. So, yeah.
Gosh. To go through that and then land in lockdown, that's just, can't imagine. At the time when you need people around you as well.
Yeah.
And then we were,
we did the Zoom calls and stuff. But it's when, it's family time when people are doing their own thing. And then it's just the two of you, and he's amazing, don't get me wrong, but he was also sort of 10, 11 at the time and just wanted to do his own thing or go on his game or whatever. Yeah. And, all of a sudden the house is silent. So we developed an incredible love for Formula One out of that very situation. I love it. And I found that Sunday afternoons, probably digressing slightly now, but they were the time where families are together, largely speaking, perhaps on the sofa, having a big Sunday lunch or whatever. And while we could, before we went into lockdown, we entertained a little bit on a Sunday. But then it was that hole in the day where I really noticed it wasn't three of us anymore, or a few more if we, got my lovely stepdaughter along or her family. And we kind of just put the TV on and started watching Formula One. And it became our thing on a Sunday, and now it's still our thing. We've travelled to 3 sort of foreign races.
Wow.
And we've been to Silverstone a couple of times, and we watch it religiously. So I think we just found that it filled that gap, and then it's a real passion for us. I took him to Texas in October. Out to the circuit in the Americas at Austin. If you'd have said to me 10 years ago or when I turned 40, you'll just hop on and take your son over to a Grand Prix in Austin on your own, then I just said, you were mad. I wouldn't have had the courage to do it ever at that point, whereas you just find it in you, I think. So.
Yeah, amazing. I love the fact that you found so much positivity out of something that was really difficult.
Yeah.
So coming out of that, the end of your marriage, all the trauma that you experienced there. So what do? You retrain to be a divorce coach so you can help people have a less traumatic experience. Yeah. You're in lockdown with your son, you feel this gap, you find a new hobby together that you're now really, really passionate. I love that approach to life. It's really finding that the positive, as you say, out of things that otherwise could have really been very, very different.
Yeah.
So looking towards the future.
Okay.
You didn't expect a few years ago to be going to Texas to Grand Prix and falling in love with Formula One. So what's possible? I love that question. What's possible for Clare moving forwards?
I think right now it's GCSE year. So I'm sort of thinking, okay, this is where we're at. We've got some great stuff planned for the summer. So I think for me, it's making memories. I've got a brilliant set of friends who are incredible. Finn and I, obviously I'll support him. We've just done his A-level choices. I think work-wise for me, I love what I do. I'm really passionate about what I do. The clients that I've got, I'm really enjoying. I'm bought into their businesses, if you like. There's a real buy-in there for me, and it's not a case of, you pay me for X amount of hours a week. It's a case of if something happens that you need to pick up the phone about, then we all understand that, one day one client might want that and the other client might want it. So I'm quite a good multitasker / plate spinner. Very rarely do they crash around my ears, but often when they do, it's spectacular. So, so I think future-wise for me, I have a massive love of travel, but I'm really passionate about what I do work-wise. So I guess I want to continue with the startups or the businesses that have plateaued or the ones that have grown and are a bit of a spaghetti mess and we need to regroup and go again. So for me, I'd love to just keep doing what I'm doing for as long as I possibly can, and making a real sort of impact with the clients that I've got. I'm working with one of them and she would like me to take on sort of more hours in a full-time role, and that works really well for me at the moment, but we won't be doing the full-time because I want to keep doing everything else. So
you've learned to prioritise what's important.
I have.
Right. Now, this is the point, because we're coming to the end, but this is the point where I normally ask my podcast guests, were there any dreams or ambitions from your younger years that you put on hold? And is there any chance of you now resurrecting them? And I'm thinking particularly around your dance. Do you still dance?
Yeah, I go to sort of cardio jungle body classes, which really feeds my love of prancing around on the dance floor. I like to go out and have fun and hit the dance floor again. So structure-wise, I don't. I found a love of fitness again when I found that it was just me. And I think for a few years, I maybe hadn't prioritised that. So working out's really good mentally for me. I can go into a class and I come out 50 minutes, an hour later, and I've not thought about anything that's complicated or I haven't done this or I haven't done that. I just come out feeling better and fitter. And mentally, I think that helps with the load. And it is tricky because you don't always feel like it and you feel like, you're tired and you don't feel like getting up and out. But I always feel better, even if it's just for a walk at lunchtime or, manage to shoehorn an hour with one of the girls in because, obviously a lot of your friends work. So it's snatching that time when you can. But I think for me being active, you don't have to go and do a HIIT class or a spin class if it's not for you. But certainly mentally, it helps me just sort of come down and relax. But I don't think I'll go into dancing again. I don't think I'm good enough now.
But we're going to see you back on the cruise ships.
I'm not sure they take me.
Never say never. But yeah, I mean, I was going to wrap up. Just want to pick up on a few things you said before we do. There is a saying, isn't there, that nobody's ever regretted going to the gym, but you regret not going to the gym.
Yeah.
Because you will always feel better if you do prioritise that. And I've been having lots and lots of conversations recently with women about, especially at this point, you're in your mid-40s or on the cusp of 50. And for a variety of reasons, lots of women are turning to weight training, not in the powerlifting sort of sense, but just more general weight training. Because what we're looking for is we're not looking for, that size 8 or whatever tiny, slim body. That's less important for us now. What's getting more and more important is staying fit, staying well, so longevity of life, because we know that we are likely to be living longer, but we want to be fit and living longer. So, this is from someone who's got fibromyalgia and struggles with arthritis, but, I still want to be able to climb stairs. I don't want to, to a bungalow too soon. And so I think making your health a priority is really key. So, I agree. Getting out there and joining those jungle.
I think, it's also a case of just chucking your trainers on and going for a walk down the road, isn't it? Yeah. Wherever you live. Yeah. because it's about giving yourself time to breathe, I think. And I often process things that I don't even realise I'm processing it when I come out, when I step away from the laptop, or I come out of somebody's business, and it'll be the drive home where I might get that eureka moment, or, it's one of those where you can sort of, I can't run anymore, so rule that out. But I did do a London Marathon in 2019 because of FOMO. That's just the worst story ever. But I think, for me, there was a quote by Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, and he said, if you're in the business of making something, then make something that's great. And I just think, it's not about signing up for the gym and losing stones of weight. Yeah, you do feel better, but it's about just getting out there and making your day better. It can be the smallest change, just to get out in nature, a little bit of winter sunshine at the moment, and it is tricky, I think, when you're juggling multiple roles. It's tricky when you get to over 40, things start to change, your body changes, your mental attitude changes, your confidence alters. But it's also about seeking that support, and there's so much support out there for women over 40, and I've not come across anybody that would ever say no if you just approach them and say, hey, can we have a cup of coffee? Can I have a chat about this business idea? Or I'm thinking about making a change. Can I use you as a sounding board? And sometimes it's just asking the question, not being afraid of a no, I think.
Brilliant. We've covered a lot today, Claire. We've covered a lot. But as we end, can you just give our listeners one piece of advice that you'd give to anyone who feels it's too late to chase their dreams?
Oh, gosh, it's never too late. I mean, literally, I've just read your podcast title. But, I think measure risks, yes. Have a little bit of a plan, yes. A little bit more like my 3 months. If I haven't stepped it up, it's not necessarily a failure. It might have been the wrong timing, although I know I just took it as a failure at the time. But I think for me, it's about taking the opportunity and going out there. When I was back at college, I briefly did a stint cold calling for a double glazing company. And I can absolutely tell you, I have never been told no in so many rude ways possible. Normally with expletives and people slamming the phone down, because we all had landlines back in the day. And I think it's not being afraid of the no, because it's probably just not the right time or the right opportunity. And I think we're kinder now when we say no than we were perhaps back in the day, and you just interrupted somebody having dinner and got in from work. But I think measure the risks, take the opportunity, but find your people as well. There's lots of great groups out there where you can have, such as your She Network, where you weren't asking me to plug that. I actually think it's an amazingly supportive group. So, and I think it's about just batting it around. You'll have a mate in your circle who's probably the more savvy business one. You'll have one that perhaps understands finances more, one that will help you with relationship stuff, one that will help you with parenting. There's always a Mother Earth that's got the most amazing recipes and stuff. So I think it's about looking around you and taking the opportunity, but with somebody by your side if you need it, So I think there's just been so many inspiring stories on your podcast, and in terms of, you don't need a plan. You just need to go for it. And if it's the right thing, it'll unfold before you, So
brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for being so candid and sharing your stories and your insights and your really interesting journey to where you are today. So to our listeners, I hope today's conversation has reminded you that no matter where you are in life, it's never too late to follow your passion and achieve your goals. And until next time, goodbye.